Welcome to Mach 10 Sports in this February 1st, 2024 episode. Glad you are joining us here tonight. We're doing the live show from the SEC Unfiltered platform for now on Thursday nights. We're doing it. But if you aren't familiar with me, Dave Shumate, I do an SEC podcast called Mach 10 Sports. We cover football, basketball, baseball. I worked in college football for 10 years, went to school at Alabama, worked at Auburn, Texas A&M, Georgia, and that was it. So we worked at 4 different SEC schools. So I feel like I have a pretty good knowledge. But if you're just joining us, you don't know us, go like and subscribe to our channel. Follow me on Twitter at Mach 10 Sports. Our YouTube channel is at Mach 10 Sports. You can find us on all podcasting avenues. And again, go give the SEC Unfiltered platform a follow as well as the CEO, host of SEC Unfiltered, Chris Phillips, as well. But again, I appreciate you joining us. We have a fun episode tonight. We have a blast for you tonight. Quite a bit to cover. Had someone tell me at work today, after next Sunday, and they were alluding to the Super Bowl, it was going to be time to catch up on shows. They're saying after the Super Bowl next Sunday, it was going to be time to start focusing on shows. And I was like, we still got college basketball, right? We're in the midst. we're at the midway point of conference play this Saturday. We're 9 games in. We only have 9 left, guys. We'll be seeing one shining moment in early April before we can blink. Just like when it's September or August when the pads start popping, it's December, and then the national championship play is played the first Monday of January or the second, and college football is over. So it's just where we are right there. But I was just like, no, we got a lot more. We got college baseball 2 weeks from tomorrow. First pitch. A lot going on right now. But we have a ton to cover. Like I said, Ryan Grubb could be going back to the Seahawks, could be going back to Seattle, not to Washington, not to UW, but to the Seahawks for new head coach Mike Macdonald. Will be interesting. We'll talk about that. I want to bring a little bit of dose of reality to this Tennessee NCAA investigation. I'll talk about that, where I think all this has gone wrong, why the NCAA isn't totally alone in all this, why we have the wrong people in charge right now. Like I mentioned, we talked a little basketball already. A hell of a week on the hardwood. We had the Mississippi State Ole Miss game the other night. That was probably the loudest, probably most energized Ole Miss basketball, platform I've seen in a while. They used to play games at Tad Smith Coliseum, and they used to get loud in the Rick Bars. That place was rocking the other night if you were watching on TV. You could really tell there was some energy. You also had South Carolina beating Tennessee. You had Alabama with their big comeback in Athens last night. And you had the Gators get the biggest win of the Todd Golden era. We had 4 massive games this past week. Again, I think it was the best midweek slate we had all year. Also in regards, we also want to go over kind of this upcoming Saturday slate. I think this is on it followed with the best midweek slates, probably the best Saturday slate. We got Auburn, Ole Miss. It's a big one. Tennessee, Florida, Mississippi State, Alabama. I think you got another big one, Georgia, South Carolina in Athens. That's a big one for both teams. South Carolina trying to go get revenge on Georgia beating them in Colonial Bank Arena a couple of weeks ago as well. But we'll preview all 7 of those matchups. We also have a great guest, Rivals head basketball analyst Jordan Harper is coming on to talk to a little SEC hoops at the midway point, kind of who he's buying, who he's selling, teams he likes in March, how many tournament teams of the SEC get in. Some are saying 9. I don't know if we get that many, but I think it could be anywhere from 7 to 9. It'd probably be a little bit in that middle of 8. We'll talk net rankings, go over standings. Man, let me send this email to our guy, Jordan, just to make sure we get him rocking and rolling here for us. And we will get boogieing on around the SEC. Perfect. Just shot that over to him. Perfect. All right. Around the SEC. So first off, as reported by Mike Florio, Alabama offensive coordinator Ryan Grubb. Like I said, Mike Florio, also known on the Twitter sphere on X as Pro Football Talk, reported that Grubb could be headed back to the Pacific Northwest to join the Seattle Seahawks, and new head coach coming over from the Baltimore Ravens, the defensive coordinator, Mike Macdonald. I met him briefly at Georgia. I know him barely. I had a few conversations with him, but a really well-spoken, well-organized guy. But the point being, they're interested in Alabama's OC, Ryan DeBoer, Kalen DeBoer, one of his right-hand guys. They're interested in him becoming the OC back in Seattle. But for the Seahawks, just a couple of thoughts here. Under consideration interest doesn't mean the same thing. Doesn't mean offer that he's gone. Interview doesn't mean his offer is gone either. If he interviews, it's something to watch closely for sure. If he's interviewing, that means he's obviously interested. If he gets the offer, that's when you're starting to get a little concerned because he's going to have to ultimately make a decision. But for now, it's just kind of a wait and see. I'll say LSU kind of went through this with wide receiver coach, co-OC Cortez Hankton interviewing with the Atlanta Falcons. So similar situation. It was announced they were interested. A lot of concern. Nothing happened, though, for LSU. So they're all right with Cortez Hankton not going with the Falcons. This isn't uncommon to be considered if you're a good coach, in my opinion. And if you're experienced, this is a good thing. Apparently, he's been on the road recruiting. I think I saw he was out in California with DC Kane Womack. So he's out recruiting, but that doesn't mean he's not going either, right? That he's just going about his duties as a college football head coach. That happens all the time. Also, Kalen DeBoer, he's also an offensive coach. He would know what to do on that side of the ball if Ryan Grubb were to leave. Sometimes I forget people realize Kalen DeBoer is an offensive guy. It's his core offense. Just him and Grubb are real tight, have that good relationship. They can bounce ideas off each other. But college coaches talk about this frequently. They do. Is it a loss? Is this a loss if Ryan Grubb were to leave Alabama? Absolutely. One of the best minds, offensive minds, in college football. And obviously Mike Macdonald, new head coach of the Seahawks, obviously feels the same way. But good head coaches lose assistants. Alabama fans should know this. Nick Saban did it every year. Did it better than anyone replacing him and joining the Alabama organization and getting rocking and rolling. I mean, it's a different situation. It's a little bit, but still, Alabama fans should be a little bit used to their coordinators being wanted. Happens at every school if you're running things correctly because people want to know how you're doing things. I mean, you're hiring good people, good assistants. If you have a bunch of assistants that nobody wants, then you got the wrong assistants. Let's call a spade here. I encourage the Alabama fans listening, take a wait-and-see approach. Just be patient. They're garnering interest for him to head back to Seattle to coach the Seahawks as the OC. But personally, I don't even think this would be from a Seahawks standpoint. And again, I know we're an SEC show, but just from a Seahawks standpoint, when I was reading this today, I was trying to put myself in Mike Macdonald's mindset here. This wouldn't even be a real logical choice of Mike Macdonald because he's already said he's still going to do the play calling for the defense. So he's a first-time, 36-year-old NFL head coach, youngest head coach in the NFL. Right now, taking a chance on a first-time NFL offensive coordinator. I don't know if he does that. Don't know if they'll probably allow him to do that. I think also being in Seattle kind of helps Ryan Grubb's cause because people are used to him, local guy to an extent. But I don't even know if that would be the best move from an NFL standpoint. You got to have a little bit of experience. I mean, that would mean you'd have a new head coach who's still going to be in charge of the defense, a first-time offensive play caller, first time in the NFL. I don't know. I don't know about that. I don't know how I just putting myself in their shoes. I don't know if they go through it. Probably interviews. Let's call a spade as well. He probably does get an interview. And I got asked today, if he does leave, let's say the worst case for Alabama, he does leave. Within Kalen DeBoer's first 2 months on the job, he's replacing an OC already. I would probably lean towards Missouri's offensive coordinator, Kirby Moore, may be a potential replacement. I think he was with them at Fresno State with DeBoer, Grubb, that Washington really offensive staff from, I think they were there in 2020, 2021. I think Kirby Moore, the OC at Missouri, was the co-OC passing game coordinator or wide receivers coach passing game coordinator. That's where he was. So Kirby Moore's a name to watch here. Stay within the league. Missouri SEC fans should know him. He went and raised Missouri's offense to averaging 10 more points per game this year. I think they averaged 24 in 2022, 24 points per game, and then 34 this year. So he moved it up 10 points. That was big. I mean, they had a leading rusher in the SEC. I think he comes from that tree. Don't be surprised if that's who it is. That's just kind of when I was thinking. I was like, I bet people were like, who do you think he'd go after? Some of my buddies from college. Kirby Moore would probably be a name I would. But again, take a wait-and-see approach. This could probably moves quickly, but we'll know something. Again, if it does, first name, remember you heard it here first. Missouri offensive coordinator Kirby Moore. Also, continuing around the SEC, let's share the screen with you right now. We're going to talk a little about 2025 SEC baseball tournament. Again, first pitch 2 weeks from tomorrow, but 2025 SEC baseball tournament, not this year, not 2024 this come up in May, but when Texas and Oklahoma's first baseball season, all 16 Southeastern Conference baseball teams will participate in the league's annual postseason tournament in a single elimination format. As you can read right here, beginning in the 2025 baseball season, it was announced on Thursday. I like this. All 16 teams. The future tournament format would be approved by the SEC athletics directors in preparation for the addition of Oklahoma and Texas, like I mentioned. Under the existing format, the top 12 teams, remember the bottom two teams last year, it was Ole Miss, Mississippi State did not make it, finishing 13th and 14th. I think everybody's going to make it. So seeds 9 through 16 is determined by the final regular seasons. They'll play on that Tuesday. It'll still be Tuesday through Sunday. So 9 through 16 will play on Tuesday. 5 through 8 will receive a bye to Wednesday. And then seeds 1 through 4 are going to get a double bye, and they don't play first till Thursday or Friday. And then the whole tournament, single elimination. I think every team would agree with this because that late in the year and how loaded and deep this conference already is and will be when you add Oklahoma and Texas, people don't want to use pitching. They don't want to wear out their pitching staffs trying to fight through an SEC. And I get it. A lot of teams want to take – it's always funny going back because I went to this tournament every year from middle school and high school. So it's always funny how seeing different coaches approached it. You always had like Ron Polk at Mississippi State, Chris Lamonis at Mississippi State. They don't really take the SEC baseball tournament seriously. The year Mississippi State won it all, won the national championship in 2021. They went 2-0 in the SEC tournament and lost both games by double digits. And I think they were the number 2 seed. I think they finished second in the regular season that year. I mean, they pitched their midweek guys. They got crushed. It's always interesting. Then you got teams like Ole Miss who take it serious. Vandy, Tim Corbin always wants to win it. Ray Tanner, when he was at South Carolina, always took it serious. When there's some teams when there's a championship on the line, they want to win it. I think Tony Vitello in Tennessee take it pretty serious. Jay Johnson, them still too early in his tenure to really see, but I think everyone will agree. I had somebody today be like, why don't they just make it 8 teams like it used to be? Well, all 8 of those teams, maybe 6 or 7 of those may be hosting. Heck, the SEC had 8 SEC host teams last year, and we'll be adding Oklahoma and Texas. So you'd almost have why would these 8 teams that are potentially hosting or 7 want to go playing kind of not a meaningless tournament, but a tournament where they're trying to rest their arms for the real postseason tournament where regional play starts the next week. So I agree with this single elimination format. I think this is best for everybody, but just want to talk about that. The SEC releasing that today. The 2025 SEC baseball tournament is going to be a single elimination format, double byes 1 through 4, and an initial bye for the 5 through 9 seeds. So going around again from the SEC, overall from that perspective, let's see, what else do we got here? Oh, before we get into Tennessee, let's go a little Brad Bohannon. Everybody remembers him. Former Alabama baseball coach. He was caught, I guess, quote unquote, betting on his team or involved in some betting at Great American Ballpark in Cincinnati, Ohio. But Brad Bohannon, the penalties have been announced today. Penalty for violating wagering ethical conduct rules. The University of Alabama's baseball program is on a 3-year probation, had a $5,000 fine. Bohannon himself has a 15-year show cause. And if he's hired during the 15-year show cause, Bohannon is suspended for 5 regular seasons. So essentially his college baseball coaching days is done. He may go coach at, I don't know, Hillcrest High School or Thompson in the Tuscaloosa, Birmingham region. But let's share the report. This was handled so poorly. It was just like 2 + 2 = 4, guys. Like, come on. Like, how do you handle something so poorly from that end? Here we go. All right. Shortly after receiving – 1 second. Sorry, I had to exit that one out. Oh, pull it up again for you. I apologize, guys. Pull it up. So I just wanted to bring up the screen. Look how dumb. Look how dumb and naive this is, guys. I mean, look at this. Look at this. So shortly after receiving the electronic messages from Bohannon, this is his guy that was betting on money or betting games at Great American Ballpark where the Reds play. I think his connection in Indiana or Kentucky from back in his day. Because remember, Brad Bohannon was the recruiting coordinator, assistant coach at Kentucky. But the bettor attempted to place a $100,000 wager on an LSU baseball game at the BetMGM Sportsbook, like I mentioned, at Great American Ballpark in Cincinnati where the Reds play. But the sportsbook staff limited the bettor to a $15,000 wager. They kind of got suspicious. Why is this guy betting $100,000 on a random Friday night baseball game? The bettor then attempted to place additional wagers involving the April 28th Alabama versus LSU baseball game. Now, this was a Friday night game. I was watching this live. Remember, Paul Skeens, the best pitcher in baseball, was pitching that night. And I'll explain a little bit more. But the sportsbook staff declined the wagers due to suspicious activity. No kidding. The suspicious activity included the bettor's insistent demeanor to get the bet placed and statements to sportsbook staff that the bet was, quote, for sure going to win, and, quote, if only you guys knew what I knew. The suspicious activity also included the bettor showing sportsbook staff messages from Bohannon explaining that the messages were Bohannon's informing bettor that Alabama was scratching its starting pitcher, who at the time was Luke Holman, and this is going to get tricky here in a minute, before the game, and Bohannon alerted LSU. So what really happened here, guys, was Brad Bohannon was tipping off information. Luke Holman was Alabama's ace last year. He was going against Paul Skeens. Well, Luke Holman, I think, had an oblique strain or something, if I remember right. So it wasn't announced till you didn't know it until like SEC Network came on and was telling you, like, hey, Luke Holman will be starting tonight. Well, he was letting his buddy know in Indiana and Kentucky so he could go make those wages at Great American Ballpark. It was like, hey, Holman scratch, hammer Paul Skeens. I mean, LSU probably wins that game anyways. But the funny part is two different things. A lot of people probably didn't watch this game. LSU was up 7-1 or 8-1, I think, in the eighth. Alabama cut it to 8-6 with guys on first and second and third, 2 outs. A base hit would have tied it. Alabama fought all the way back. You know, Brad Bohannon sitting there in the dugout like, oh my gosh, dude, we may lose this. How are we making we may lose this bet, but my team may win. I don't know how to react. I'd have loved to seen his mindset, or asked anybody, like, was he getting a little antsy in the dugout? Asked somebody like the pitching coach, Jason Jackson, who was the intern last year when Alabama hosted a regional, lost to Wake Forest in the Super Regional. Now he's still the pitching coach. But I would be interested to see if any of them were like, was he getting a little edgy or something? Because they were up big, LSU, and they let Alabama come back in the eighth or ninth, cut it, tying runs on second and third, lead run at the plate. Alabama was a power team last year. They could hit some home runs, so you never know. All it took was one pitch. And then the other crazy part, Luke Holman, the starting pitcher, Alabama's Friday night guy last year that was scratched, he's now he transferred to LSU. Now he's in LSU's weekend rotation, could be the Friday night guy for them. We'll see. But it's crazy. Just a lot of twists and turns. Like, you wouldn't know that unless you follow SEC baseball hard. But I also wanted to follow that. I mentioned that in a tweet today. Thought it'd be funny that a lot of people don't really follow college baseball. Again, I think the NCAA's failed advertising baseball. # grow the game. One of the best sports there are around. You got to love college baseball, especially these SEC series come the spring. But again, a lot of twists and turns. Really, a lot of twists and turns. The pitcher that was scratched this whole story is now playing for LSU this year. Alabama almost came back and won, but no one really knows that. So some crazy stuff. Brad Bohannon's career's over. I got a better chance to be an SEC baseball coach right now. 15-year show calls. Even if someone did hire him his first 5 seasons, he would be suspended. Crazy stuff, guys. Crazy stuff. But I wanted to bring that up. But let's get back before we get our guy Jordan Harper over from Rivals to talk a little SEC basketball. We're going to talk about Tennessee and this NCAA stuff. So unless you've been living under a rock, you have obviously heard about the NCAA investigating Tennessee again. This time, as reported by Sports Illustrated and Pat Forty, focused on a private flight for a quarterback signee who was a freshman this past year, Nico Amalavea. Apparently, Booster paid for the trip. This had something to do with the Spire collective that Tennessee's involved with. But the thing that kills me is the NCAA plays this naive type of card. Like, oh, yeah, the collective Spire, yeah, they're considered a booster. It's like, well, no kidding. No kidding. Because if you put a graph together of probably all the money you get from your big donors and then the people that donate to Spire, it's probably the same group of people. So, yeah, they are a booster, but you can't keep just changing the rules. You just can't. I thought Tennessee responded accordingly, protecting themselves. I get it. Some people may be like, well, they're kind of just being like, why are you coming after us? When in reality, they did probably break some technical rules, but still, Tennessee Chancellor Dondi Plowman, smart woman, by the way. I mean, I think she did. I mean, they had some skin in the game. I thought they handled the 10. They probably thought the first time, because the big issue here is they're not trying to get hit with another lack of institutional control after the Jeremy Pruitt sanctions. And Tennessee opened their doors to the NCAA and were like, hey, come investigate whatever you want. But they were also trying to get rid of Jeremy Pruitt. Let's be honest here. This wasn't just as Tennessee's just, oh, yeah, come cooperate. And then this time they're not. They were trying to get rid of Jeremy Pruitt, so they had to pay the buyout. They were kind of tired of it. It ran its course. Philip Fulmer retired. Donda Plowman was all a part of that as well. And I get it. She's protecting her university. And this time, she stood by the collective Spire. And you know what? The NCAA hates collectives. So I think they're coming out and trying to make a statement. I mean, you've seen Florida. You've seen Florida State get attacked right now. You're obviously seeing Tennessee. I think there's other schools on a list that are coming out, but they haven't talked about it. I think it's what Tennessee got a little pissed off about was, hey, we knew all this, but why'd you make this public? Couldn't we have just handled this off the radar? Which is a little sketchy, but it is what it is. If you didn't know they were going to leak it out to the media, yeah, that would piss you off a little bit. I mean, just changing the rules in the middle of the game, it's like it's the retroactive stuff that kills me. It's like the parent who has let their kid have no curfew for the first 3 years of their high school life, and now the child's in their senior year, and they automatically want to start enforcing a 9:00 curfew. It's just, well, you've allowed these habits to accumulate. What makes you think their last year they're just going to totally change? Like, you can't really – you're pulling the rug right out from underneath them. Like I mentioned, the retroactive penalties just kill me. They just kill me. It really makes no sense. It's like changing – it's like giving someone a speeding ticket. It's like if you change the speed limit a week later and you went and looked at all the cameras on these stoplights that they have now, and everybody that is going over the new speed limit – when they weren't the last week, you give them tickets. You've changed the rules. You retroactively changed the rules. That's what kills me. I want to pull up Danny White's statement quickly here. Read it, that it came out today. I'm not going to read Dinah Plowman's. Everybody's seen that. This is our first episode since we've done this, since all that came out. But here's Danny White's statement here. Statement from Tennessee AD Danny White. The NCAA generally does not comment on infraction cases because there's a rule against it. However, that has not stopped them in the past from leaking information to the media as they did this week about us. I mentioned Tennessee was not happy about that. I think they wanted to handle this behind closed doors. So that's what pissed them off, Plowman and White. And I understand that. And then back to Danny White's statement. Their actions made this ill-conceived investigation public and forced us to defend ourselves. It is clear that the NCAA staff does not understand what is happening at the campus level all over the country in the NIL space. Very true. Very true. After reviewing thousands of Tennessee coach and personnel phone records, NCAA investigators didn't find a single NIL violation, so they moved the goalpost to fit a bit of a predetermined outcome. Again, retroactively changing rules and trying to penalize teams. We talked about that. They are stating that the nebulous, contradictory NIL guidelines written by the NCAA, not the membership, don't matter in applying the old booster bylaws to collectives. Now, what he's saying there is the NCAA tries to say, the members. I think the NCAA came out and said that the membership makes the rules. Well, I think Tennessee and Danny White here are kind of like, yeah, but we didn't set these specific rules. Like, this isn't. We're comparing apples and oranges here. And back to Danny White here. If that's the case, then 100% of their major programs in college athletics have significant violations. Essentially, they're being a rat now. They're throwing everybody under the bus. If that's the case, then 100% of major programs in college athletics have significant violations. This is obviously silly and not productive, as is blaming the membership whenever they are challenged. We need to be spending our time and energy on solutions to better organize college athletics in the NIL era, something that the NCAA leadership failed to do back in 2021 when NIL started. Student athletes, prospective student athletes, coaches, and administrators across the country deserve better, and I refuse to allow the NCAA to irrationally use Tennessee as an example for their own agenda. That's Danny White, Tennessee's AD, releasing a statement today. That's what he came out and said. So essentially, Tennessee's pissed off they released this to the media. They want to handle this stuff outside of that. Retroactively changing stuff. We're giving people speeding tickets for going over the speed limit on something that wasn't the speed limit at the time, but now it is. So we're doing that. So that's what kind of bothers Tennessee. And I think they're trying to be the face of, hey, we're going to try to shut down the NCAA here. I really think that's what they're trying to do here. But like I said, you're the parent and you set the rules, NCAA, but you have already completely mismanaged this whole situation for the last 3 years and starting in 2020. In the NCAA's case, multiple decades. But you wanted Congress and the government to step in and assist you in these rules. And now it's going way over your head, but yet you're still trying to enforce your rules to kind of show you still have some teeth when you really don't. That people are trying to show that, hey, I do deserve a paycheck for sitting here at the NCAA. And I've known people who've worked at the NCAA and people that were now work back, administrators back on campus. And even they're like, yeah, a lot of people kind of sit on their tails there and not do a whole lot. Now, obviously, we need rules and enforcement. I'm for that. We don't need anarchy in college football. We already kind of have it. We have to have some kind of rules of enforcement. We really do. Nothing can survive. No government, no entity, no organization without some kind of rules, organizations that people are supposed to live within. The only Tennessee concern that if I'm a Tennessee fan is the second lack of institutional control charge here. So that's something to keep an eye on. Now they'll probably take them to court. We saw the state of Virginia and Tennessee. You go after the NCAA from that perspective. But the NCAA, like I said, just trying to justify its existence right now. The biggest issue here is we do not have the right people in place right now to run college athletics, and specifically college football. If it were up to me, well, I got asked this yesterday on Twitter. If it were up to me, what would I do? Quickly, I think I'd be doing a disservice if you didn't let me have some more resources and some research and some time. But first, I'll say the NCAA isn't alone here in being at fault. The state legislation is to blame as well. I mean, they can barely get basic stuff done. Why do we expect them to change college football? Nor should they. We have other concerns in this country. But in regards to what I would propose, I think college football needs to be its own entity. It's time. We don't need an NCAA governing body. College football is its own entity, makes its own money. It's different than the other sports. It's different than college basketball. It's different than college baseball. It's certainly different than most women's sports, than all women's sports. It needs to be its own entity. Then it needs to have a commissioner that has actually worked in the sport and have a committee of 6 to 8 people who are also familiar with how the sport works on a daily basis. Determining how we play, this is key, determining how we view the players as either student athletes or employees will be another key deciding factor on how you structure everything. Because if we go to the revenue sharing and treating athletics departments as true businesses, there's not going to be as many sports to monitor. We'll monitor 3 sports: football, men's basketball, and baseball, and maybe one sport. Soccer, women's soccer, maybe softball, gymnastics, women's basketball, whatever women's sport maybe brings in some money. I mean, LSU baseball is followed, supported as any. I think Ross Dellinger from SI brought an article a couple of years ago. And this is older, probably from 2019, 20. They only brought in $800,000, and they're the most supported college baseball program in the country. One of them, and they're coming off a national championship. But again, you won't have as many sports to monitor if we want to run athletics departments like businesses. All these guys out there like Dan Wolken think these universities, I've worked in them, guys. These universities they don't have money trees sitting in the back that they go pick off or do. All these schools operate in the red, and if they were run like true businesses, they would have been cutting a lot of staff members in sports. Now, this could go a few different directions and could change the way you structure everything. But I do know from talking to people that have worked in Indy, like I said, there are a lot of unqualified people in there just trying to collect checks. So we need a change. Now, you may ask, and again, I got hit up on Twitter yesterday, who should be on the committee? Again, need some time to research a list if I were being fair. But I would start with guys like Nick Saban, Matt Brown, David Cutcliffe, David Shaw, Mark Pantoni. For people who don't know him, he's the general manager, director of player personnel for Ohio State, been around Urban Meyer at Florida. Urban Meyer hired him in Ohio State. Ryan Day's kept him. I think he's kind of the face of personnel, does a good job from that standpoint. Walker Jones runs one of the best collectives in the country at Ole Miss, the Grove Collective. He also has been the CEO of Under Armour. I think you need a business mindset as well. And I like Joe Klatt, throw in the media side, a guy who's played, understands the college football landscape. I think those guys just initially are guys that come to mind. Then I would think you need a few 2 to 3 business type minds. Again, I would need more time to fairly, if I was put in charge of this, to go interview, get my ducks in a row and who I wanted to hire on that. No names from a business type mindset right now. But again, I think Walker Jones, former CEO of Under Armour or vice president of Under Armour, who runs the Grove Collective now for Ole Miss, done a phenomenal job. I think he fits a little bit in that mold. A group similar to that would have a good understanding and familiarity on how to handle the current landscape, I believe, in college football. Listen, this is a mess to clean up. And these court cases with the states of Tennessee and Virginia versus the NCAA will change college athletics in sports, essentially, I think, as we believe it. I mean, as we understand it and as we know it. So something to keep an eye on, but I wanted to bring it up. We just don't have the right people in place. There needs to be an organization. There needs to be structure. I listed some guys I think it would be fantastic to be on a committee. But again, it all starts with college football becoming its own entity, setting its own rules, its own guidelines, because it's so different than every other sport. And I think you could keep maybe an NCAA type governing body over the rest of the sports. But it is what it is now, guys. Stuff has changed. Stuff has changed. So we got to get that ball rolling. But just wanted to address the Tennessee stuff before we get our guy, Jordan Harper, on here from Rivals to discuss a little SEC basketball midweek review. Let's see if Jordan's about to get on. Let's get him on. He's going to join us here in just a minute. But yeah, I mean, what a heck of a transitioning over to the hardwood. What a fantastic week on the hardwood over there. But bring in my guy, and here he is, Jordan Harper over here. Jordan, what's going on, baby?
What's going on, dude? How you doing?
Dude, I appreciate you hopping on with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Always glad to be on.
How's everything going?
Going good, man. Alabama got a big win last night. Been loving the SEC basketball so far this year. I mean, every year it's probably one of the funnest conference to follow just because the parity is insane every year and you never know what to expect. Just like last night, Florida and Kentucky, and then South Carolina upsetting Tennessee. So it's a great time to be a fan of SEC basketball, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Again, we got Jordan Harper with us, head basketball analyst at Rivals.com and Tide Illustrated. Give him the follow at HarperNation23. Jordan, let's get right to it, brother. First, a lot of shakeup in the midweek action. We talked about it. Awesome league to follow this year. Both Kentucky lost, Tennessee lost. How big was that win for Alabama last night in Athens, coming back from a standpoint of winning the SEC regular season?
Yeah, Nate Oates said if you're going to win the SEC, you got to win games like this. Games that you're really supposed to win because you're a better team. But the fact that it was on the road, it makes it kind of iffy. So if I looked at it in the last 2 years that Alabama won the SEC, which was last year and then 2 years before that, they were 14-4 on the road. So you've got to win. You've got to win those road games, especially the ones that you should win, like Georgia's and the LSU's, Texas A&M's, where Alabama's a better team than they are, but it being on the road makes it a toss-up. But I said to a few buddies of mine last night that I thought that was the best win of the season for Alabama. I know they beat Auburn and they beat Mississippi State on the road, but just to show the grit and the tenacity and the mental toughness to come back from that deficit on the road in what was a pretty hostile environment at Stegeman Coliseum, and to show that they can come back. They're not mentally weak or they're physically weak like a lot of people like to say because they are a smaller team. But I think that showed a lot about Alabama. And I think that they're starting to gel. They're starting to believe in each other. And with a new team that Nate Oates pretty much put together in one offseason, that's huge. And I thought that might have been the best win they've had, or most impressive win they've had all season.
Yeah, that could be a game that kind of springboards you. You may find yourself down in the NCAA tournament game, and you can resort back to, hey, we're down on the road at a pretty solid Georgia team this year. We can come back. Now, continuing talking SEC championship race. We got South Carolina in the midst of this thing as well. How many wins do you think regular season? Again, we play 18 conference games in this league. How many wins do you think the regular season champion is going to have to get, or is going to have?
Yeah, so I went ahead. I typically do this every year. About the 1/3 of the way through, you typically get a good feel on how teams are. So I go through and I look at every single game remaining on the schedule for every team, and I kind of predict who's going to win based on what I know right now and see what the final record's going to be. Now, a couple of those wins I had for Kentucky and Tennessee didn't come through this week, so that kind of shakes it up. So if I take that off, I had Tennessee winning before with 15 wins, but now it might be 14. I mean, the more these teams lose games like this at home, the lower the win total goes to win the league. So right now, I would say 14 might be the magic number. We might even have a tie at the top because I had Tennessee about a game, maybe two ahead of Alabama, Auburn, and Kentucky. So you might have a tie at the top with 14. If there's a lot of chaos, maybe 13. But I would be pretty shocked if it's not 14 or maybe higher.
Yeah, no, it kind of feels like 14-4 for sure would be how many you take to win the league. Now, a team I think it's kind of a little bit going under the radar here, just got a massive win, the best win. We're going to get right to it. The best win of their coaches era, the Tide Golden era. Thought on Florida as we're kind of halfway through conference play. What do you kind of see their ceiling? Florida seems like they're kind of getting that roster lineup healthy for the first time, getting them all on the same floor at the same time. What do you think? Ceiling floor here, Jordan?
They're a solid squad. They got a nice mix of really good guards and pretty solid bigs. They're top three in the conference in points per game. I'm always a big fan of teams that can score. They average 86 a game, but they average the second most free throws a game. But their big Achilles heel is free throw shooting. They're next to last. I mean, they're about right there tied with Mississippi State as the worst in the league. A lot of close games come down to that, as you know. So especially come tournament time.
Yeah.
I think that makes them a tough read. I can see them up to 12 or 13 wins based on their schedule. Their road games are a little difficult, but they get Vanderbilt twice. They get Arkansas, I believe again, Missouri. So they got an easy home schedule. If they can beat Alabama at home, and then if they can beat Auburn at home, and just steal one of these road games either at A&M, I could see their ceiling probably being around 12 wins. Walter Clayton Jr. is a really good scoring guard. You saw him hit the shot last night to send it to overtime, and they got a good complement guy in Zion pulling with them. But they also have, obviously Riley Kugel, who's not having the season everybody thought he would this season. But, they got a couple big bigs too. Tyrese Samuel's good. Michael Hanlockton is a rebound machine. And, they have the potential to put it all together. It's just we haven't seen it for a full season yet. So I would say probably a ceiling of 12, floor of probably 9-9. I would say probably with their home games are probably the worst that they'll finish. I had them at 10-8. Now I had them 10-8 before losing or beating Kentucky, which I had them losing that game. So they could easily bump that up to 11. But I would say 10 or 11 is probably the most likely in for them.
Yeah, I could see that. If you're an Alabama fan this year, you're kind of like, God, we got these guys twice.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of what you're looking at. It feels like you're looking at their schedule. You're like, they need to split that A&M Auburn game. I know they get Auburn at home. I feel like they need to get one of at A&M and Auburn here in the next week.
Yeah, that Saturday game, Florida and A&M is probably the most outside of Tennessee, Kentucky. Obviously, that's going to be the best game of the weekend. But that's the one I'm going to have my eye on the most. Just kind of seeing who's for real. If Florida goes on the road and beats A&M, I'm a believer for sure. I'm obviously a believer after beating Kentucky on the road. That's one of the best wins of the season out of any team in the country. But they still haven't got that signature win outside of that. It seems like the two best games they've played all year were both against Kentucky. So is that a matchup thing?
Yeah, you're right. It's open up league play.
I'm not sure that I need to see it against another team. If they beat Auburn at home, that would be good, solidifying for me. But the Florida A&M game is going to be really interesting. A&M needs this game really bad because if they lose to Florida, I think they're toast personally. I do. I don't think they'll make the tournament. They need to win these home games. They don't necessarily need the road games as much, but if they can't afford to drop a home game. If they lose one to a middling team like Florida, I don't know. Their schedule's not good enough. They can't hang on to that Iowa State win back in November. I mean, they just can't. So
Jordan, you have the Tigers going into the Pavilion this weekend?
No, I have Ole Miss winning. Until Auburn proves to me that they can beat a Ken Pom top 100 team, they're 0 for their last 11. I see that stat every time they lose. I'm like, it's why Auburn hasn't made it past the first weekend outside of the Final Four run, the Bruce Pearl era. They just can't. They're home monsters. I mean, give it to them at Neville Arena. They're about unbeatable. But they go on the road. They're just a totally different team. Until they prove to me that they can do it, I'm just going to be. If I'm a bettor, I'm going to keep betting against them.
Because what is Auburn Bruce? I think what is he 0 for 10 in his last road quad one games?
They're 0-11 in their last road game. 11 road games against Ken Pom top 100 teams. Now that's just average. Top 100 is probably just average. So. It's just something they've always struggled with under Bruce Pearl is just winning away from home. And that's kind of why they've struggled in the tournament outside of, one big run.
Now, Jordan, we got counting now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. What do we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it looks like we got 8 teams in the SEC ranked in the top 50 net ranking. Ole Miss sitting there at 57th. Again, a great opportunity on Saturday against Auburn at home. People are saying the SEC may get anywhere from 7 to 9 teams in the NCAA tournament. As we stand here on February 1st, we're a day or two away from being at the halfway point of league play. 9 more games to go. How many teams, I'm asking you as of today, do you think get into the NCAA tournament out of the SEC or from the SEC?
Gun to my head, I would probably say 8. I think that they have the potential to get 9. They also have the potential to only get somewhere probably about 6. I mean, it's because you have such a heavy top 4 of Tennessee, Kentucky, Bama, and Auburn. South Carolina is starting to get up into the solidified, safe category. Mm-hmm. Outside of that, you got Florida State, Ole Miss, A&M, all hovering on that first 4 out, last 4 out, or first 4 in, last 4 in, first 4 out, next 4 out, whatever. They're all hovering in that area. So they need some big wins. They can't afford bad losses. So it's just something that they're going to, I just think one's going to be left out, and I think the others are going to be good enough to make it 8, which would be really good for the league.
Jordan Harper going with 8 teams from the SEC. Again, Jordan Harper, head basketball analyst at Rivals and Tide Illustrated, joining us. Again, give him the follow at HarperNation23. Jordan, last question before we get you out of here. Appreciate you joining us. Out of those tournament teams that are kind of in that mix, those 9 teams, who in the league do you trust the most? Who do you trust the least in an NCAA tournament setting type game?
Oh, boy, I don't trust any of them. They're all Jekyll and Hyde, seems like, every week. If I had to pick, I would say Tennessee, just because they're probably the most balanced defensively and offensively. But they haven't shown to make a run in the NCAA tournament since Rick Barnes has been there. I don't think they've made it
to the Sweet 16,
past the second weekend. So, yeah, I mean, they've run up against some really good teams, like when they played Carson Edwards and Purdue that one year. But they're probably the safest bet to say that would go the farthest. Bama's the best offensively, but suspect defensively. Same for Kentucky. Auburn can't win on the road or in neutral sites consistently. And then you have a bunch of teams staggered that are just unproven, probably haven't had much experience in the NCAA tournament. Mississippi State always makes it and is either one and done or wins one and loses in the 8-9 matchup. But I would say Tennessee, and probably the least confident of, say, the Big 5 outside of the fringe teams. I would say South Carolina or Auburn are probably the 2 that I'm the least confident in, just because South Carolina is very unproven in terms of big-time basketball in the SEC or in the NCAA tournament. Obviously, they were picked dead last in the conference by a lot of people. And then Auburn hasn't proven to me that they can make it past the first weekend outside of that one run. They're not great offensively. They're solid defensively. But if they have a cold shooting night, I mean, you saw what it was against Mississippi State. They had 21 points at half. So they have one of those games in the NCAA tournament. I mean, they're toast as well. So outside, the top 5, I would say South Carolina or Auburn. I have the least amount of confidence in.
Yeah, and again, I'm keeping you here a little bit longer. Just 2 more quick questions.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
What do you think the issue is with Arkansas this year? Just a complete miss in the portal? Outside of the stuff you hear in the rumors, inside the locker room and stuff like that, but just the overall team, do you think it's just a total miss on just the transfer portal and kind of that underestimating that locker room dynamic a little bit?
I think it was a miss schematically for Muss. I think he went after the wrong guys in the portal, and here's why. Is because last year they struggled mightily with outside shooting. So they go out and they get guys like Tremont Mark, Keon Minifield that can't shoot the 3. They can't shoot outside. So you have a bunch of guards in the backcourt that are basically the same. They're quick. They can get to the rim, but they can't shoot outside. And that's really where they're struggling. They can't generate offense because nobody's respecting their outside perimeter game. So they're just kind of packing the paint. Brazil isn't having the year people thought he would, being maybe a first-round pick. And he's been very disappointing coming off that season-ending injury last year. And, I mean, outside of the locker room dysfunction that's kind of going on, no telling what all that's about, but that – contributes to it. But to me, it really comes down to not having the right players. And if you're going to play the portal game like Muss likes to play, you have to get it right, or it could be bad product on the floor like you're seeing this year. They got lucky last year because Nick Smith Jr. and all the guys that they had, Anthony Black, were just super talented, took over games at times. They don't have that guy this year.
Yeah.
They just have a bunch of guys that are play similar games.
Yeah.
And when you have that, it's just a bunch of mush on the floor, and you're just saying it's like kind of like that meme of just poking it, saying do something, and they're not even going to do it. So, I mean, I don't know. I think it was just a system error for Muss in terms of bringing in the guys that he needed to have a good offensive system.
Would it shock you if Eric Musselman's not in Fayetteville next year?
I'd be shocked if he comes back. Yeah, absolutely.
So you don't think he's going to be there?
I don't. I don't see him.
I agree with you. We're going to talk about that a little later in the show. But yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, I don't see him back. You know, you've heard whispers about the Louisville job, and I don't. Even if he doesn't get the Louisville job, I think he's going to go somewhere else. I just think
I can see UCLA potentially.
Yeah, Mick's going
back.
Yeah, him going back out west would make a lot of sense. You know, you've seen in some places, you know, non-confirmed, maybe Arizona State or places like that out west. I mean, I could see that. I don't think he'll stoop that low in terms of, you know, going from Arkansas to there. I think he's a better coach than that. But no, I think he's kind of fallen out of favor with a lot of the Arkansas boosters, you know, big spenders. Arkansas, you know, fan base is starting to get tired of it. So I just think he's kind of fallen out of favor, and I could see him dipping after the year.
And just last question, following up what I asked you about who do you trust really in the SEC and whatnot, and you're like, really nobody out there. Do you kind of feel that way about college basketball as a whole, really teams away from their own building? Is it kind of, you're like, man, there's just so much parity this year. Even Purdue, I feel like it's kind of, how is those games officiated in the tournament when it in regards to Zach Edey? You saw it when they played Alabama this year, the foul discrepancy. What was their foul discrepancy last night? I saw it was some crazy number. How many free throws they shot? I say it was something like that. Is there you feel like that's really across college basketball and not just an SEC thing that you can trust anybody? Or is there a team out there nationally that Jordan Harper's like, no, I trust them in the tournament?
Probably the only team I trust is UConn. They've been there and done it, and they have the dudes to do it. They have the coach in place. I mean, they have everything you need. They're consistent. It's just I don't trust anybody else, mainly because of what you saw last year with Purdue. You kind of skeptical of them going, away from home, especially. You know, the foul discrepancy you were mentioning was 46-8. I mean, if you're 30 plus 38 in free throws and barely win at home, you know, I have no problem with Chris Collins getting ejected after that game. That was well deserved. Bravo to him. But no, there's really nobody from any conference outside of UConn that I feel comfortable picking to the Final Four. It's really going to come down to matchups, man. And you know, last year I thought Alabama got a great draw where they were. And I had circled that Sweet 16 matchup potentially against San Diego State. And as a Bama fan, you know, you're praying they don't face them just because you know how they play. And they faced them, and you saw why. It's because they play up in your grill like Tennessee does. Alabama struggles with Tennessee every game, especially in Knoxville. Alabama typically gets them back in Coleman every season, but it's just style of play. Sometimes it favors you, sometimes it don't. And I think that's what it's going to come down to in the tournament is who gets the best draw and what kind of upsets happen, because it wouldn't surprise me if we have another last year happen where Florida Atlantic and teams like that make it to the Final Four.
No, you're right. It's a wide open year in college basketball. I would agree with you. I think UConn is probably the team you trust the most nationally. But in the SEC, like you said, I think it's just like every NCAA tournament, just going to depend on matchups. But again, Jordan, should be a phenomenal last back half of the season. We'll have you on again before probably the SEC tournament. Me and you will get on here and talk again if you're willing to come back on. But I appreciate you again, everybody. Jordan Harper, head basketball analyst at Rivals and Tide Illustrated. Give him the follow at HarperNation23. Jordan, I appreciate you hopping on, brother.
Appreciate you, dude. Have a good one, man.
Later. Who we got here? Noel's biggest fan. Todd Golden has really done a great job with them. Had some rocky moments, but they've shown they can compete and beat anyone in the country. They're going to be a 4-5 seed that you hate to play in March. Appreciate the comment there. Noel's biggest fan. I agree. I think Florida's a dangerous team. I mean, I think the top 3 offenses in the league this year for sure in the SEC are Alabama, Kentucky, and Florida. All have some defensive issues, though, as well. But again, I think Florida's been a little hurt. They put, watch them in non-con against Virginia when they played in Charlotte. They had some other opportunities, Oklahoma as well, that you're just kind of like, Florida could take advantage of this and win these games. Kentucky, Jordan mentioned it. I think their two best games of the year were both against Kentucky. The one at home that I thought they would win to open up conference play, and they didn't. But Florida's a team coming on. It's dangerous. If you're Alabama, Alabama and Florida both play twice still. And again, you look at everyone's schedule. Always going to the week, looking at just taking it, especially this year in SEC basketball. And we're about to review and preview this upcoming week. But you look at the two-game stretch each week, and everyone has hard stretches. Because like I said, I think 1 through 10 or 11 road games in this league are tough. And that's not even including Bud Walton Arena. That's not even saying Arkansas is a tough road game this year, when inevitably we all know that is a tough place to play. But really, I think anywhere outside of Columbia, Missouri, unfortunately, Fayetteville, Arkansas this year, and then at Memorial Coliseum in Vanderbilt, who Tennessee coincidentally struggled with on Saturday. Those three places you feel like you should go get wins. But everyone else, including LSU at the PMAC, I think can be tough road games. But again, yeah, I like Florida too, Noel's biggest fan. I like Florida a lot. They're starting to come on, starting to get healthy, all their guys playing at the same time. But let's quickly review the action from Tuesday and Wednesday night. We had two fantastic games on Tuesday night. Again, I think this was the best midweek slate. Biggest upset of the week, South Carolina over Tennessee, 63-59. Dalton Knecht did his thing, 31 points. Santiago Vescovi as well for Tennessee. But outside of that, non-existent for the Vols offensively. But South Carolina, give Lamont Paris and his team credit, deserved to win this game. And Tennessee deserved to lose this one. Didn't make enough plays down the stretch at home. This is one Tennessee may regret in regard to the SEC regular season championship race. These are the games you don't want to lose at home. But here we are, South Carolina, a game out of first place in the SEC right now at the midway point. Crazy to think about. They were projected to finish last, but hey, Lamont Paris' team is playing well. South Carolina had to play physical, and they had to play a full 40 minutes to win this game, and they did. They did just that. They controlled the pace. That's what I liked. When I went back and watched this game, I liked the pace they played with. They slowed it down some against a team who likes to slow it down. Like I said, Lamont Paris, credit, great game plan. Tennessee missed a couple point blank. Going back and watching it, multiple double digit, like 10-plus bunnies, point blank shots. Was it Jonas Adu that missed a wide open dunk? I forget. A lot of point blank shots they missed. It wasn't Tennessee's best effort, but again, obviously, to win at Tennessee's not going to be able to play at their best. That's just unrealistic for anyone to beat Tennessee. Tennessee is not going to be able to be playing their best. So give South Carolina credit. Lamont Paris, biggest win of his tenure, obviously. Now South Carolina owns the two best wins in the league right now, I think. Kentucky at home and at Tennessee. It was Mississippi State with their wins against Tennessee and Auburn, but I think with those both being at home and then South Carolina having a road win under their belt, I think you got to give it to South Carolina. Two best wins in the league. Massive win for Lamont Paris. Then on Tuesday night, another phenomenal game. Ole Miss beats Mississippi State 86-82. Both teams fight for an NCAA tournament berth. Everybody knows what Chris Beard's done at Ole Miss so far this year. The Pavilion looked like it was rocking. It was right. That's the most energy I've seen in an Ole Miss home game in a long time. Really fun game overall. Guard play was awesome, phenomenal. Jalen Murray, Juju Murray for Ole Miss, making big shots. Matthew Morrell made some big shots. TJ Caldwell had a big game for Ole Miss as well. And Josh Herbert for Mississippi State had a phenomenal game. 94, I looked it up, 94 guard points in this game combined, really between those four guys. Murray for Ole Miss, Morrell for Ole Miss, Caldwell, and then Hubbard for Mississippi State. A lot of big shots were made. A lot of big shots made in critical situations between Jalen Murray and Josh Hubbard. Back and forth game. State fought their tail off to make a run late to have a chance. And I actually loved the last play Chris Jans drew up. But he got it in the hands of Cam Matthews, got fouled, went to the free throw line, obviously missed both. But I think you got to give Josh Hubbard the shot there. He has to get the shot there. One of the best conference games of the season, if we're ranking a top 3, top 5 conference games in general through the first, however total many SEC games we've played so far. Everybody's played 9, so whatever that is, or we're about to play 9 after Saturday. I think it's a top 3, 5 SEC games we've seen so far this year, and we're only at the halfway point. I can't wait for the rematch in Starkville, but massive game. Ole Miss continuing to hold serve at home. Will be interesting with Auburn coming to town on Saturday. Alabama going to Wednesday night's action, rallies to beat Georgia 85-76. They covered this game, guys. They were favored by 6.5. No way in the first half did anybody think Alabama would cover this. They covered. They won by 9. But Alabama could not have played worse in the first half. 1 3-pointer made in the first half. Very few free throw attempts. I think 4 in the first half for Alabama, and they were all by big men. I think it was Muhammad Diabate, maybe Muhammad Wagi. They were very lucky to be down only 14.5. If Georgia didn't have 13 turnovers in the first half, Georgia's probably up 20 plus. Georgia finished with 19 in total, but they had 11 and a half. It kind of kept Alabama lingering. 14 is not an insurmountable lead for Alabama, especially at a half. But if you're Georgia, that's how you lose a double-digit lead, 19 total turnovers. Georgia just keeps leaving some meat on the bone. This game at home, they could have won. Tennessee at home. I mean, their biggest win was on the road against South Carolina, and that looks good right now. But they got that South Carolina team coming back to Stegman this week. They need to have it. Again, there's so many quad one opportunities in this league on a nightly basis. It really is, outside of Vandy, Arkansas, Missouri, and LSU, depending where you play them. But Georgia had 4 guys in double figures. Noah Thomason had a great game with 15 points. Thomason, Demery, Melendez, Chawea had a great game. But in regards to Alabama, good teams win even when they do not play their best, and that's what Alabama did. Their better players stepped up when they had to. Mark Sears making a big 3 down the stretch to tie it up, to cut it to 3. Rylan Griffin hitting a big 3 to tie it up. Grant Nelson, when Georgia's fighting back, it's 2 back-to-back big 3s to essentially put the game away. These are the kind of games Bama's going to look back on almost to the opposite of what Tennessee did against South Carolina. Big, that was a game we won the SEC regular season again by 1 game. These are the games why. The tenacity to come back in the second half, keep that foot on the gas, not get down. And then Tennessee's going to be sitting there if they lose that game, lose the SEC regular season by a game, they're going to be like, got to hold serve against South Carolina at home. And I know South Carolina is good. And I know we got a lot of South Carolina listeners. Lamont Paris should be SEC Coach of the Year right now. But again, if you're in the SEC regular season championship race, like South Carolina is, they're starting to get to that point. You got to start winning those certain games. We talked about Florida a little bit. Florida gets the biggest win of the Tide Golden Era with a 94-91 overtime win against Kentucky at Rupp Arena. Not only that, but the program's first road top 10 wins 2003 when Billy Diamond was really just kind of getting that thing going. They didn't even have Joe Kim Noah and the boys at that point. I mean, who'd they have on that team then? That may have been Adonis Haslam may have been on that team. Or what's his name? Miller. That's who was on those teams back then. But Walter Clayton was clutch. Finished with 23. Hit the game-tying 3 to send it in overtime. I mean, what's Kentucky doing? That's where Cal messed up. You foul when you're up 3 late. What was Cal doing? You got to foul there. But Walter Clayton, the Iona transfer, career high 7 threes. Also, Tyrese Samuel and Zion Pullen had 20-plus points apiece. Florida's getting a little scary in my point right now, in a good way if you're a Florida fan. I wouldn't want to be playing Florida. Alabama's in the middle of an SEC West race. You know, or SEC regular season race once again. Nate Oates is probably like, got Florida twice. They're good offensively. Anyone could go off that night. Pullen, Clayton, Samuel. Who am I missing? Riley Kugel, who hadn't had a good season overall this year. He could go off at any moment. So this Florida team's dangerous. Finally healthy. And they now have the confidence to go win anywhere in the league. If you can win at Rupp, you're going to carry that confidence with you throughout any other building in the SEC. They're 5-3 now. They go to A&M on Saturday for another big opportunity. Speaking of Kentucky, lack of consistent lineup is hurting them. No DJ Wagner. Adu Thero has been hurt. Justin Edwards may be back on Saturday. But the offense isn't the team's problem. The Wildcats had 4 guys scoring double digits themselves. And Reed Shepard, Antonio Reeves, Rob Dillingham, and Oyinso. So all those guys, they had 4 guys scoring double figures. They simply just can't defend. They can't stop the ball. People are getting to the rim. There's no rim protection right now or keep it in. When Big Z's still getting adjusted. But that's why I thought Florida would win the first game in Gainesville. I thought Florida had this advantage, but they ended up flipping and winning the game in Rupp, which is crazy. Because, again, you can go back and look at my Twitter. I picked Florida to win this game when they opened up conference play, 4 weeks ago that Saturday in Gainesville? But Kentucky right now, just too many missed assignments, going under screens, late helps, and poor positioning is something you consistently see. All's not lost. They host Tennessee at Rupp again, but they got to win this to stay in the SEC race. They have to win this game. You can't be mounting up losses. There's too many tough games left, and we're only halfway through the season. It's a must-win for Kentucky if they want to stay in the SEC regular season race, because it's another home game. You can't go 0-2 at home during the week and expect to win the regular season. Not this year in the SEC. Must win for Cal and Kentucky on Saturday. But fun game, though. 29 lead changes specifically in this Florida-Kentucky game. 15 ties in total. But the biggest win in the Tide Golden Era. That was a fun game last night. Really was. Really was a fun game. Auburn, we're going to briefly cover this one, an 81-54 home win over Vanderbilt. Get right game for Auburn after dropping 2 road games to Alabama and Mississippi State last week. I can imagine Bruce Pearl got after them. BP was kind of on their tails, challenged them pregame. Hey, guys, let's go. We got to get our Mo back. Jalen Williams, Denver Jones, Janai Baroom led the way. Vandy's just not a good basketball team. I mean, horrendous shooting team at times. They shot 15 from 56 from the field, which is good for 26%. That's not a three-point shooting percentage either. That's field goal percentage. 26%. Horrendous. Vin Lubin recorded a double-double. He was really the only bright spot for Vandy. They hung around a little bit in the first half. They only down 10 at halftime, but still big game for Auburn, though, on Saturday. Me and Jordan talked about it. He's fired up about that Florida at Texas A&M game. I'm fired up about that one. Don't get me wrong. And we'll talk about that one in a moment. But I'm also fired up about that Auburn at Ole Miss game. That's a big one for both teams as well. But Auburn getting a must-win game, a get-right game back at home. And then Arkansas gets a road SEC dub, second conference win in Como, in Columbia, Missouri last night, 91-84. A game they controlled for most of the night. Arkansas, Mekhi Mitchell dominated the paint. Second straight double-double for Mekhi. Mitchell's coming on here. You got Tremont Mark, Keon Minifield played well. Arkansas won the paint battle 36-30. Arkansas shot pretty well, shot 54% from the field. Musk kept saying he wants zone 1 points. He wants zone 1 points. He wants productive points. They didn't shoot. I think they only shot 7 threes. They were 80% from the free throw line and won the rebound battle as well. Oh, and they forced 18 turnovers. You're going to win a lot of games like that when you shoot 80% from the free throw line, which they've struggled at times. When they've won the rebounding battle, Mekhi Mitchell seems to be playing a little bit better, growing some confidence. They shot well, were effective, didn't take a lot of bad shots. And they forced 18 turnovers. You're going to win a lot of games, no matter where that's played. But they get their second SEC win, first road SEC win. But Mizzou, I mean, they were efficient offensively as well. Just not again. Tamar Bates, the Indiana transfer, led them with 29. But again, I think you got guys like Nick Honor. You got guys like Connor Vanover, who obviously wasn't on the team last year. But I'm just making a point here. You got Noah Carter. You got guys that were kind of in that 7th to 9th rotation spot on last year's team. Obviously, they missed Demoy Hodge, Kobe Brown, guys like that. But it just kind of feels like I don't really trust their scores outside of Bates at times. I don't even know if he's a true scorer. But, again, Arkansas getting their second big dub. But what is going on in Arkansas? A lot of rumors going on. A lot of scandals in Arkansas. A lot in the past. I shouldn't say a lot. It's a loose term. But, I mean, you've had the Houston Nut, Gus Malzahn, Springdale 5 whole era. The year they won the SEC West with Darren McFadden and Felix Jones, but they had Mitch Mustang at quarterback, who they hired Gus Malzahn after him working at Springdale. They hired him to go be an SEC coordinator. They won the SEC West that year, lost to Florida in the SEC championship in a game they should have won. If Arkansas fans are listening, if Reggie Fish doesn't fumble, Florida wins. Arkansas may win that game. Florida doesn't win a national championship the game that year. I say that all the time, but that was a little bit of a scandal. Obviously, the Bobby Petrino, Jessica Durrell motorcycle was a scandal. This would be up there too. If there's truly a love triangle in this locker room, I lean towards that's not being the case. I think the bigger issues here is what me and Jordan talked about a little bit. Is Eric Musselman going to leave Arkansas? Is he going to be the head basketball coach heading into the 24-25 season? I don't think no one truly knows that. I don't even think Muss knows right now. I don't even think his wife, Danielle Musselman, knows that right now. But I do know there's feelers out there. I'd bet a lot of money he's put feelers out there. Now, Muss is a professional. He's trying to focus on getting through the rest of this season. But I'm sure through his agents and stuff, he's put feelers out. Where there's usually smoke, there's some fire. Especially in today's time with how fast news travel. But that's how Muss has been his whole career. He's bounced around a lot. A lot of assistant jobs, and went to Nevada. Then obviously he's been at Arkansas. You'd be naive to think Muss was going to retire at Arkansas. And I think even realistic Arkansas people would say that. I can't wait for him probably tomorrow for his Friday press conference before their trip to Baton Rouge to play LSU. He'll be asked tomorrow, I bet, in his press conference. Within the next week, I guarantee you, Eric Musselman, one of those Arkansas beat writers who are great at their jobs, will ask him, hey, coach, what is these rumors going around your interest of maybe the Louisville or UCLA job? And even was kind of floating out there, Arizona State, maybe. I mean, as crazy as this season has been for Arkansas, if I told you going into the year Arkansas would be finished, it would for sure be playing on Sad Wednesday of the SEC tournament. And if you don't know what that means, that's the first 2 games in the SEC tournament, the bottom 4 teams tipping off on that Wednesday. They're certainly probably going to be in that. They're a preseason top 5 team, had one of the best portal recruiting classes that Eric Musselman brought in. They're going to finish in the bottom four of the league, totally missed the tournament. Where do I have them right now in the net rankings? They're currently in the net 123. You never would have bet that. So the cherry on top would be for Eric Musselman to leave. It would only make sense at this point. I'm with Jordan. I don't think Eric Musselman is going to be in Fayetteville next year. I think he's either going to be in Louisville. I kind of lean towards Pasadena area, UCLA, taking over from Mick Cronin if something were to happen to him. And under the radar, Arizona State, and some people might be like, Arizona State, isn't that too big of a – he's going to drop from Arkansas to Arizona State? I think he wants to get back to the West Coast. He's a West Coast guy. And I think all this stuff with off the field, love triangle stuff, it not going well, I think there's some division between him and some of the big money people of Muss wanting more NIL money. I think some of the big money people are kind of like, Muss, we gave you a lot of money this year and we totally missed on this transporter class. So what are you talking about? I just think they're not on the same page anymore. It wouldn't shock me if he's going. Again, I'm not saying he's planning his exit strategy right now at 8:05 Central Standard Time Zone as he's supposed to be prepping for LSU coming off a win last night against Missouri. I'm not saying that. I don't even know if he knows he's going to leave. I'm quoting right now. I don't even think Eric Musselman or his wife even know he's going to leave, but I do think there's been feelers put out. I'm telling you, watch out for the Mick Cronin. Watch out for the UCLA job coming open. Eric Musselman, I think, would love to go get his hands on that one. And again, obviously Louisville, because that one will be open. But again, guys like Jerome Tang have been thrown around for that job as well. All right, moving over. Let's go to the SEC basketball standings as we head into the weekend. Got Florida's schedule there. There we go. All right, as we stand right now, heading into Saturday's matchups, 8 games. This will be the midway point, like I keep saying, on Saturday. This will be the 9th conference game for most teams. And we only play 18, guys. But Alabama coming in, 7-1, sole place in the SEC. Could be a big week for Alabama. If Alabama were to beat Mississippi State on Saturday, Ole Miss beat Auburn, Kentucky beat Tennessee, and Georgia beat South Carolina, Alabama's looking pretty good right now. But Bama's 7-1, South Carolina and Auburn and Tennessee kind of tied up, knotted up at 6-2. Tennessee's that half game behind because they hadn't played one of those weeks. Remember, every team gets like a week off. They don't play a midweek matchup. Tennessee's already done that. Ole Miss, Kentucky, Florida, knotted up at 5-3. Georgia, Texas A&M and LSU 3-4, Mississippi State 3-5, Arkansas 2-6, and both Missouri and Vanderbilt are both over at 0-8, 0-7. But that's going to change this weekend. Missouri and Vanderbilt play, so that's going to change. But man, it's a big weekend, guys. It's a big weekend, kind of separation, some must-wins for some teams if they really want to stay in the SEC regular season championship race. Like I said, Kentucky can't afford a week where they lose both home games, especially to Florida and then to Tennessee at home, where you're going to be competing for an SEC title. But just wanted to go over the SEC standings heading in to conference play. And the net rankings, as we stand right now, the net rankings heading into the weekend, Tennessee comes in at 5th, Alabama 7th, Auburn 8th, Kentucky 25th, Florida 36th, Mississippi State 37th, South Carolina 41st, Texas A&M 42nd or 46th, Ole Miss 57th, Georgia 82nd, LSU 95th, Arkansas 123rd, Missouri 131, and Vanderbilt coming in at 238. But let's go back. Let's show you this week's schedule. Let me go back and share the screen for you. Make sure we got that. Pull up this week. Here we go. All right, so tipping up sauce on Saturday. We got 7 matchups. Arkansas at LSU leading the way here. According to Kim Palm, this is an LSU 69% chance of winning. If you haven't listened to my show before, I always give what Kim Palm's going to think, and I can tell you if I'm going to disagree or not. It'll be interesting to see what that opening line will be tomorrow. Can Arkansas carry that in? It's like, did they build some confidence off that Kentucky loss last week? And it's always tough to build some confidence off a loss, especially if a team that's preseason top 5. Arkansas should expect to beat Kentucky at home. But maybe they built off that. At least it looks like a Mekhi Mitchell did. Posted his second double-double last night. Give me LSU at home, though. I like Jalen Cook and the guys at home. Give me LSU at home against Arkansas. I would agree with Kim Palm on this one. Then you got the 12 p.m. Central Standard Time tip, South Carolina at Georgia on the SEC Network. Currently, we have Kim Palm thinking Georgia with a 54% chance of winning at Stegman Coliseum at home. Remember, Georgia already played. Georgia got the win at the Colonial Bank Arena. Man, Georgia's due. They got to start. They keep leaving meat on the bone. Lost 2 home games to Tennessee and Alabama. They probably felt like they had, especially Alabama. Give me South Carolina, though. I think they're going to come in with a chip on the shoulder again. They already lost this game. I like South Carolina. I think Georgia late gets tight and does not play well. Till I see them beat a good team, which South Carolina obviously is this year. Give me South Carolina, older, mature team. Again, like I talk about. Love Cooper. Love Michi Johnson. I like BJ Mack at times. I just kind of like this team's grit and edge they got about them. Give me South Carolina getting that revenge road win against Georgia after Georgia beating them early in the year. And then we got the 2:30 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone tip, Missouri at Vanderbilt. The battle of the 2 winless teams, 0-8, 0-7. Kim Palm has this as Missouri with a 57% chance of getting the road win. Yeah, I would agree with that. That's going to be a sleepy Memorial Coliseum. Midday, 2:30 on the SEC Network. Not a lot of people will be there. I think Missouri Dennis Gates, and I think he'll have his team ready. I think Jerry Stackhouse is kind of ready to lead Vanderbilt. I think this is it's ran its course. I think Missouri comes in a little bit more hungry. Both team seasons don't have a ton to play for. Again, they're 0-15 combined in conference play. But I think Missouri gets the road win. So I'm rolling 2-1. We're rolling with 2 road wins to start us off the first 3 games. Then 3 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone, Florida at Texas A&M on ESPN2. One of the better games of the weekend. Right now, Jordan mentioned this was his favorite game of the weekend. Right now, Kim Palm has this as A&M having a 57% chance of winning this game at home at Reed Arena. How does Florida handle that big success coming off Todd going the biggest win of his era at Rupp Arena? You got to bounce back quick because you probably got home real late last night. Got to prep for Texas A&M today. They'll get on a flight tomorrow. Florida, Texas, long trip. I know they're college kids. They bounce back fast. But again, quick turnaround. A&M needs these kind of games. Give me A&M at home. Give me A&M at home. I don't know if Florida gets the big win. I like Florida. I think they're going to be a definite NCAA tournament team. I just do not think – I don't think they get this done. I don't think they get this win. I think A&M gets a must-needed win. They can't keep affording to lose at home. Buzz Williams, this team has to have it. So give me A&M. And then another one. I'm personally going to be at this one on Saturday night. 5 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone, Auburn at Ole Miss on the SEC Network. Currently, Kim Palm has this as a 71% chance of Auburn winning this game on the road, which is a little higher than I thought. I mean, I know Auburn went and gave it to them at home at Neville Arena 2 weeks ago at home. It ended up winning by 25, if I remember right. Rough week for Ole Miss that week. Took the loss at Baton Rouge to LSU and then at Auburn. Again, you have those 2 road games in this league. If your week is consistent of back-to-back road games, you'll be lucky to go 1-1. But in this game, this is the game I don't know. I think Auburn's kind of got to have this if they want to stay in the league race. Ole Miss, I don't think they're really going to be in the league race, but man, it would almost be really close to – almost would have to really mess up down the stretch not to make the NCAA tournament here and win that. These would be 2 massive quad one road home wins if they were to get this win against Auburn, against Mississippi State. With this matchup, Alan Flanagan plays former team again. Auburn's going to have to D up, play gritty. I think Bruce and the boys get a win here. I think Bruce and them go hammer. I think they kind of take Juju Murray out of his game, Jalen Murray a little bit out, get Alan Flanagan a little flustered. Again, I think Auburn is one of the deeper rosters in the country still. Some people still may call me crazy. Not really much of a guy. Obviously, Janine Broom's their best player. I still question guard play away from home. But I think Auburn gets their first big road win. They have to. Bruce has got to be motivating these guys. Like, hey, nobody thinks we can win at home. You heard Jordan give them the big stat. They haven't. They're 0-11 in their last 11 road games against top 100 teams. This is their opportunity. They need it for them to stay in the SEC overall regular season race because they get Alabama at home in the middle of the week next week, and then they go to Florida. It doesn't get easier, but it doesn't get easier for anybody. But give me Auburn on the road, shaking that bugaboo off. And then Mississippi State at Alabama. Again, these 2 teams have already played. This will be a 7:30 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone tip on the SEC Network following that Auburn-Ole Miss game. So it's a quadruple header on the SEC Network this weekend. Alabama with an 80% chance of winning. And Mississippi State always kind of gives Alabama a little trouble because they're big and physical. Teams like Mississippi State, Tennessee, obviously San Diego State last year. Man, Mississippi State should have beat Alabama at home last year. Alabama had to come back. But I think this Alabama team at home obviously shoots a lot better in their own building. If Alabama shoots well, it's just a matter of how much they beat Mississippi State. I I like Mississippi, Alabama in this one. Do they bounce back from an emotional win quickly after that big comeback against Georgia in Athens? And Mississippi State, again, probably has had the toughest opening conference schedule of anybody. I mean, you're looking at it here. I mean, look at their first few games in the league. I mean, it's unbelievable. It really is. I mean, here we go. They at South Carolina, Tennessee, Alabama, at Kentucky, Vanderbilt, obviously, then at Florida, Auburn, at Ole Miss, at Alabama. Jeez. I mean, this is their easy stretch coming up after Alabama. Not easy, but most manageable. Georgia, Missouri, and Arkansas. But just wanted to bring that up. Mississippi State's going to get back. I'd be shocked if they didn't make the tournament, but I think Alabama gets the win in this one. And then finally, the last matchup of the night, the big one, 7:30 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone tip. Tennessee at Kentucky at Rupp Arena on ESPN. I think it's a must-win for Kentucky, just like it's a must-win for Auburn this week to stay in the SEC regular season championship race. Can't be going 0-2 at home in a week. Kentucky, you losing to Florida made this Tennessee game a must-win. Kyle's got to challenge this group because Tennessee's coming off a loss too. Both these teams coming off losses at home. Both need it to stay in league play, to stay really in the regular season championship race. Who gets this win? I trust Tennessee more here. I think Tennessee's the deeper, more mature team. Kentucky's a young team. College basketball is a veteran sport now. I think Tennessee needs it more. I think Rick Barnes has his team prepared knowing, hey, we need to win this. Both teams do not want to go 0-2 this week. Give me Tennessee. So for this weekend's matchups, I'm going to take LSU at home. Give me South Carolina getting another solid road win. Give me Missouri getting their first conference win. Florida not being able to bounce back after an emotional win in Rupp. Give me A&M in a must-needed win. They can't afford to go 0-2 at home this week. So they can't afford another loss at home. Give me Buzz Williams and Texas A&M. Give me Auburn getting the road monkey off their back, getting their first real big quad one road win. I think Alabama, this game could be close, Alabama, Mississippi State, because it's a contrast of styles. Mississippi State gives Alabama fits sometimes. They made free throws in the first one. They may have beat Alabama in Starkville. But I think Alabama at home, a little bit closer. I like Alabama. And then Tennessee, Kentucky. Who wants to stay in this, guys? Both need it. Both don't want to go 0-2. Give me the deeper team, the guy who can take over a game like Dalton Knecht. I like the older, mature team. Give me the veteran team, Tennessee, Saturday night in Knoxville. But just finishing up, that's it for tonight's show, guys. I appreciate you joining us. We covered a lot. We talked about Tennessee and the NCAA, how they have the wrong people in charge. Football needs to be its own entity. We can figure this out, guys. We can figure this out. Just have to have the right people. This Tennessee, NCAA stuff, Florida State, Florida, Virginia get involved. It's going to change the landscape of college football and specifically college athletics, so keep an eye on that. We brought Rivals college basketball analyst Jordan Harper on to talk about the SEC at the halfway point of the season. Fun interview. Go back and listen to it. Had a lot of great points. Reviewed the SEC midweek action. Thought it was one of the best slates we've had. Again, a lot of phenomenal games. Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Tennessee, South Carolina, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, Kentucky, name it. We have great games this weekend. Tennessee, Florida, Bama State, Ole Miss, Auburn, Texas A&M, Florida. A lot of good. Georgia, South Carolina, a lot of good ones. We talked about Alabama OC Ryan Grubb. Does he go back to Seattle to coach the Seahawks? I personally don't think it's a great fit. Mike McDonald's going to keep calling the plays, youngest head coach. He's going to stick on defense. I don't know if you hire a first-time OC too. Don't know if that's a fit, maybe a little bit outside the box thinking from that standpoint. We talked about Brad Bohannon getting the 15-year show calls. SEC baseball in 2025 in Oklahoma and Texas joined the league. They're changing the format, singles elimination tournament. I agree with that. But again, don't forget to give us the follow. Again, I'm Mach 10 Sports. I'm going to start doing my show here on Thursday nights on the SEC Unfiltered platform. Appreciate Chris Phillips giving this opportunity. But again, go give me the follow at Mach 10 Sports. Again, go give us the follow here at SEC Unfiltered. We have constant stuff all day, every day. There's no off season here. But again, I appreciate you joining us on this episode. You have a fantastic weekend.